Usually when we talk about a multi-billion-dollar enterprise, there's this assumption that behind the curtain, it's all running on this perfectly oiled, state-of-the-art machine.
Like a spaceship, right.
Yeah, exactly, a spaceship.
Hmm.
You imagine this frictionless environment where, I don't know, data flows seamlessly and decisions are made instantly, and everything just sort of hums along.
It's a beautiful technological illusion, honestly. I mean, we just assume absolute operational elegance at that kind of scale.
We do, but then you actually look at the day-to-day reality of, like, global supply chains or finance departments, procurement teams.
Oh, yeah. It is eye-opening.
And suddenly you realize that spaceship is actually being held together by thousands of exhausted people manually copying and pasting numbers between like 10 different screens.
Just desperately trying to make the systems talk to each other.
Exactly.
Because the software holds the data, sure, but the humans are still acting as the integration layer. They're the manual glue holding the modern enterprise together.
Which is really the fundamental problem we are tackling today. So if you're listening to this, you are likely navigating these exact operational headaches right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Whether you're prepping for a high-stakes tech strategy meeting, trying to make sense of the overwhelming noise around AI, or you're just insanely curious about how massive global businesses actually operate under the hood.
This deep dive is your shortcut to the cutting edge of enterprise tech.
Right. Because the mandate is completely shifted. We have to figure out how massive companies can take their static, clunky software and turn it into these autonomous, intelligent engines.
And crucially, doing it without breaking the business in the process.
Without ripping out the foundation. So to guide us through exactly how that happens, we're unpacking a phenomenal practitioner's guide today. It's titled Agentic AI x ERP. Layer intelligence beside your ERP.
It's a fantastic resource.
It really is. And we have to give prominent due credit to the authors here because this entire framework comes from the minds at the Agentic Gap.
Right, based out of Amsterdam.
Yes, headquartered in Amsterdam. And they are an enterprise AI transformation firm. They specialize specifically in agentic AI and multi-agent systems, or MAS.
And what sets them apart, I think, is that they aren't just theorizing about this stuff.
Not at all. I mean, looking at their client base, they partner with leaders across CPG, retail, FMCG, DTC, automotive, healthcare, energy manufacturing, logistics, and BFSI sectors.
That is a massive footprint.
It's huge. And they are on the ground implementing these AI solutions that deliver measurable ROI within 6 to 12 months.
Which is virtually unheard of in enterprise tech timelines.
Right. 6 to 12 months. And they do it using their proprietary validation-first framework. It's really impressive. I highly recommend checking out their site, theagentics.co, because their whole ethos is just incredibly sharp.
How do they phrase it in the guide?
They say, let me find it. Yeah. They exist for one kind of leader. The ones who want AI that gives results, not AI that could.
I love that. Not AI that could.
Yeah. They don't just sprinkle AI on top of an existing ecosystem. They actually re-engineer the entire business stack to be AI native from the ground up.
And then scale from POC to a global rollout.
Exactly. So, okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand their solution, we first have to really clearly define the limitation of modern enterprise software.
Well, the core limitation lies in the very systems these companies rely on to survive. I'm talking about enterprise resource planning systems.
ERPs.
Right, ERPs.
And if you're listening to this, you probably work with an ERP every single day, something like SAP S/4HANA.
Oh, yeah. Very common.
And, it's a world-class system of record. It stores every transaction perfectly. But the guide makes this really compelling argument that an ERP is a terrible system of action.
It really is, and I like to think about it like an ultra-organized, incredibly accurate filing cabinet.
Okay, a filing cabinet.
Right, because a record can only tell you the state of the world. It can't actually change the state of the world.
Well, that makes sense.
An ERP stores data in these very rigid, isolated tables. It knows, for example, that an invoice arrived on Tuesday. It knows the exact amount.
But the system has no reasoning capacity to actually do anything about it.
Exactly. It can't pull that invoice, verify it against a changing business reality, and execute the payment autonomously. That bridge between knowing a fact and doing something about it, it is completely unautomated.
It's just a gap.
A huge gap.
The text actually highlights a very painful daily example of this knowing-doing gap. the three-way match failure in finance.
Oh, the classic three-way match.
Yeah, for anyone who hasn't had the distinct pleasure of working in accounts payable, this is when a vendor invoice comes in, but the price is just slightly different from the original purchase order.
So what does the world-class ERP do in this situation?
It just stops, throws an exception, flags the error, and completely gives up.
Just throws its hands in the air.
Literally, leaving a human being to play detective. That poor finance professional has to open the invoice in one window. They open the original purchase order in another.
And then they have to go dig into the warehouse system, right?
Right, to check the goods receipt.
Right.
Then they're probably searching through some massive PDF of the vendor contract to see if there was, I don't know, some negotiated seasonal rebate that explains why the price is different.
And what's fascinating here is the sheer irony of that whole process. The ERP actually already holds every single piece of information that human just spent an hour looking for.
Wait, really? It's all just sitting there?
It's all sitting in the database. The contract terms, the warehouse receipts, the historical pricing, it's all there. But because the data lives in these disconnected tabular silos, the system itself cannot connect the dots.
It lacks the reasoning.
Exactly. It lacks the reasoning to connect them.
Yeah.
And that manual gap is where businesses bleed just an astonishing amount of time and money.
Not to mention employee morale.
Oh, for sure. No one wants to do that all day.
And this compounds quietly across the entire company. Which brings us to the data on where the market is actually heading. Because 2026 is a massive inflection point.
It's the boom.
Pointing to Gartner data from the guide, they note that by 2028, 33% of enterprise software applications will include agentic AI.
Which is wild considering it was up from less than 1% in 2024.
Less than 1%. And supply chain AI alone is rocketing toward a $46 billion market by 2035. Even SAP themselves are embedding, I think it's over 30 specialized Joule agents into their ecosystem.
That's a massive signal to the market.
Just to clarify for everyone real quick, when we say Joule agents, we're talking about SAP's specific brand name for their internal AI copilots, right?
Yes, exactly. SAP is building their own proprietary agents to help navigate their software. So the direction of travel is totally settled here. AI agents are coming to the enterprise.
Okay, so what does this all mean? Because I have to push back on the hype just a little bit here.
Please do.
The guide brings up this devastating statistic from the MIT Media Lab. They found that 95% of enterprise generative AI pilots delivered absolutely no measurable P&L impact.
None. Zero.
And furthermore, Gartner projects that over 40% of agentic AI projects are going to be canceled by 2027 due to what they call agent washing.
Yes. Agent washing. That's when software vendors slap an AI label on traditional rules-based automation.
But it doesn't actually have any autonomous reasoning, right?
None at all. It's just a shiny label on old tech.
So if you're sitting there listening to this, wondering why your company's highly touted internal AI chatbot feels like, well, a glorified, unhelpful autocomplete for your daily tasks.
That statistic completely explains your frustration.
Right, so why are the 95% failing?
What's fascinating here is that they fail because of fundamental architectural flaws. Companies go out, they buy a generic AI tool, and they just attempt to bolt it onto the side of their ERP.
Just staple it on there.
Pretty much. And
Yeah.
the problem is that AI has no deep context. It doesn't understand the incredibly complex web of business workflows.
So it might, summarize an email for you, but it never crosses over into executing actual operational work.
Exactly. It can't. Now, the 5% that actually succeed, the ones driving real P&L value, like the Agentics go, they take a fundamentally different approach.
And the guide is very clear about this.
Mhm.
They do not rip out their ERP.
No, you never rip it out. Ripping out a legacy ERP is chaotic. It takes years, and it carries immense risk to the business.
So what do they do instead?
They run a governed agentic layer in parallel to the ERP. They build an intelligence layer right beside it.
Okay, so let's guide everyone through the architectural blueprint of this successful 5%. The Agentics Co. outlines a 3-layer architecture. Layer 1 is the context engine.
Right, and this layer essentially dictates what the AI can actually see.
So it continuously ingests live data from the ERP, the CRM, HR systems, and external market feeds. And the guide mentions it does this through standard SAP interfaces like iDoc and OData.
Yes.
Now, for those of us who don't spend our weekends reading SAP technical manuals, what are those? Are they just standard data pipes?
Yeah, essentially. Think of them as the established nervous system that connects the ERP's core database to the outside world and does it safely.
Safely being the key word.
Right. iDocs are traditional messaging documents for business transactions, and OData is a modern web protocol for querying data.
Got it.
So by tapping into these, the context engine isn't just looking at old stale spreadsheets. It is actively watching the live pulse of the business.
Which solves a huge problem. Because I was thinking about it like this. An AI trained on a stale, like 10-year-old textbook is one thing, but a continuous context engine is like giving the AI an open book test with live stock market feeds.
That's a great analogy. Or like Waze for traffic. Continuous ingestion prevents the AI from making decisions based on an obsolete reality.
Okay, but seeing the data isn't the same as understanding it, which brings us to layer 2, the semantic layer.
Right, because raw data is not understanding. We discussed earlier how ERPs store data in these flat, tabular rows.
Right, like a row that just says vendor 499 and amount $10,000.
Exactly. The semantic layer takes those flat tables and builds a complex knowledge graph. It actually defines the relationships.
How does that work in practice? Like, give me a concrete example.
So instead of the AI just seeing vendor 4099 as some random text string, the semantic graph links that entity to its entire operational history.
Yeah.
It links the vendor to their specific master service agreement, to their typical delivery delays, the current price of the raw materials they supply, even the emails they sent last week.
It builds a complete web of context.
Yes. So when that three-way match exception happens that we talked about, the agentic AI isn't just looking at a math error.
It sees the whole picture.
It understands that it's dealing with this specific vendor under this specific negotiated rebate clause with this payment history. It understands the actual meaning behind the numbers.
That is so powerful. But that deep comprehension unlocks layer 3, which is the action engine.
And this is where the magic happens.
And the risk. If layer 2 is the brain understanding the context, layer 3 is the hands doing the work. This is where the agent actually executes the workflow in the ERP. But I gotta be honest, giving an AI the hands to move company money or change inventory levels, that terrifies me.
As it should. Taking action is where the massive risk lies. And this is exactly why governance must live strictly at the action layer. It is a non-negotiable.
Especially for any enterprise dealing with money, master data, or regulated reporting. We're talking about compliance with the EU AI Act, CSRD, SOC2.
You absolutely cannot let a black box algorithm run wild in your financial systems and just hope for the best.
Right. So what are the actual controls here?
To satisfy these frameworks, the action layer enforces strict mechanical controls. So role-based permission checks on every single action the agent attempts.
Every single one.
Yes. Plus, immutable, unchangeable audit trails detailing exactly what data the AI looked at to make its decision. There is a hard-coded instant kill switch. And crucially, for high-risk actions, the agent is forced to route its proposal through a human approval gate.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. I want to challenge this a bit.
Go for it.
If we are routing things to human approval gates,
Yeah.
aren't we just back to the original problem? Like if a human still has to manually review the issue and click approve, the bottleneck is still human. Is it actually autonomous?
I see why it looks that way, but the nuance here is that the nature of the human's work changes fundamentally.
How so?
Think back to our finance worker dealing with that three-way match exception. The actual bottleneck wasn't the physical act of clicking approve, right?
Yeah, it was the hour they spent digging around.
Exactly. The bottleneck was digging through the warehouse systems, the emails, the PDFs to find out if they should approve it.
The investigative work.
Right. So when the governed agent routes an exception to a human now, it has already done the heavy lifting. The investigation is complete. The writing path itself serves as the explanation. The agent presents this unified case file. I propose approving this invoice despite the variance. Here is the highlighted contract clause, here is the verified goods receipt, and here is the math.
Wow. So it completely shifts the human's job from doing the math to simply checking the math.
Exactly. And verification takes 10 seconds, whereas investigation takes an hour. That is how you achieve operational velocity without sacrificing human oversight. The case file is the explanation in itself.
That makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so how does a massive enterprise actually deploy this architecture without triggering like a massive IT crisis? We established that a big bang platform change is a bad idea.
The playbook for achieving that validation first ROI that the Agentic TOE advocates for it relies on scoped module-by-module deployments.
Module by module.
Right. You identify a specific workflow, you build the semantic mapping for just that area, and you run a 4 to 8 week pilot.
Wow, just 4 to 8 weeks?
Yep. Prove the P&L impact before you even consider scaling it globally.
The guide is actually very explicit on where companies should start too, finance. They call it the best starting point because the pain is quantifiable to the literal cent.
It really is.
The text cites data from Parseur and Ardent Partners. Under manual processes, the average cost to process a single invoice is $10.89. But by deploying a governed agentic layer to handle touchless three-way matching, that cost drops to a best-in-class $2.78.
It's a staggering reduction, and beyond the sheer cost, the velocity improves dramatically. Cycle times drop from an average of almost 11 days down to just 3.1 days.
Which, when you're processing hundreds of thousands of invoices, shrinking that cycle time frees up a massive amount of working capital.
Exactly.
But finance is clearly the easiest place to prove ROI because, it's largely historical. You're reconciling things that already happened.
Yeah.
What about live moving targets, like a global supply chain?
Well, the guide notes that supply chain is actually the biggest vertical for agentic AI right now. Yes. Supply chains are inherently volatile, they're cross-functional, and time-sensitive. Standard rigid software simply cannot handle a scenario where, say, a sudden disruption in a shipping lane collides with a massive spike in local demand.
A traditional system just throws up red alerts everywhere.
Right. But a multi-agent system approaches this totally differently. Instead of one monolithic AI trying to calculate everything, you deploy a team of specialized agents that actually negotiate with each other.
Negotiate, like with each other.
Yeah. This is where the technology becomes so fascinating. You have one agent responsible solely for monitoring logistics and shipping delays. You have another agent monitoring live weather patterns and commodity pricing. A third agent is analyzing local warehouse inventory.
Okay, so if a cargo ship gets delayed,
The logistics agent flags the delay. The inventory agent realizes a stockout is imminent in 3 days, and then the procurement agent immediately scans alternative local suppliers, calculates the expedited shipping costs versus the lost sales revenue.
and they propose a fully costed, rebalanced supply plan.
Exactly. They reason through the alternatives and present a solution before the human demand planner even logs on with their morning coffee.
That is wild.
They collaborate through that shared semantic layer to really understand the trade-offs.
Hold on, though. That sounds incredible. But if we have multiple agents rebalancing global inventory and purchasing materials at light speed, what happens if the underlying material codes they are looking at are completely wrong? I mean, a highly autonomous AI running on bad data sounds like a much faster disaster.
You've hit on the most critical prerequisite in the entire process, which is why the next module in the playbook is master data management.
The least glamorous module, by far.
I completely agree it's not glamorous. Vendor hygiene, standardizing material descriptions, detecting duplicate entries, it is incredibly tedious work.
But so important.
Absolutely. SAP themselves explicitly warn that data quality is a prerequisite for AI, not a byproduct.
Because an AI agent acts as a massive amplifier, right?
Yes. Feed it pristine data, it makes brilliant decisions.
Hmm.
Feed it garbage master data, it will execute terrible decisions autonomously.
So the playbook dictates using specialized agents to continuously crawl the ERP, validate the entries, flag the duplicates, and essentially clean that foundational baseline.
You have to have that pristine baseline established, especially because of what regulators are demanding next, which actually brings us to the final and perhaps most urgent module we need to discuss, ESG reporting.
Environmental, social, and governance compliance.
Right. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the regulatory landscape here is shifting dramatically, especially in Europe.
The guide points to the new EU CSRD rules. Companies aren't just reporting standard financials anymore. They are legally required to report on over 1,100 different data points regarding their sustainability and environmental impact.
1,100 data points, compared to roughly 200 for normal financial reporting.
That's insane.
And the challenge is that ESG data does not sit neatly in an ERP database. It is scattered across subsidiaries, external spreadsheets, complex global supply chains.
So think about the manual burden of chasing down lifecycle assessment data from a Tier 3 supplier. And actually, define a Tier 3 supplier for us real quick.
Sure, it's your supplier's supplier's supplier, the raw material producers deep down in your supply chain.
Right, so trying to manually email a Tier 3 supplier to get accurate carbon output data, that is crushing corporate sustainability teams right now.
It's a nightmare. But governed agents are perfectly suited for this kind of relentless administrative pursuit.
Because they don't get tired of sending follow-up emails.
Exactly. They can autonomously email suppliers, Extract the data from whatever PDF or spreadsheet the supplier sends back, map it into the semantic layer, and aggregate it against the ERP baseline.
And most importantly, they build an audit-ready trail of evidence.
That's the key. Every ESG data point requires source provenance.
So when an external auditor asks where a specific carbon calculation came from,
The agentic layer has immutably recorded the original source document, the time of extraction, and the reasoning it used to categorize it. It is an architecture built for survival under severe regulatory scrutiny.
it really is a complete operational paradigm shift.
Yeah.
Okay, we have covered a massive amount of technical and strategic ground today. Let's synthesize the bottom line for you listening.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. But the main takeaway is this. The era of ripping out your entire tech stack and spending 5 years implementing a new system just to adopt AI, that era is over.
The 95% failure rate of those generic bolt-on AI pilots really proves that the old methods do not work anymore.
Right. The fastest, lowest risk path to becoming an AI-native enterprise relies on parallel architecture.
Yeah.
You maintain your ERP as your trusted system of record, and you layer governed, multi-agent intelligence directly beside it to act as your system of action.
You scope the projects tightly, you build a deep semantic understanding of your data, and you prove the P&L impact one module at a time.
Starting where the friction is highest, like we saw with finance and supply chain exceptions. That disciplined validation-first framework is how massive organizations achieve real, measurable agility in a matter of months, not years.
It's incredibly practical.
It really is. A huge thank you again to the incredible team at the Agentic Post out of Amsterdam for providing this roadmap. If you are leading an enterprise and you want to move past the hype into AI that actually delivers measurable results, you absolutely need to read their work and explore their case studies at theagentics.co.
You know, looking at this entire evolution, the continuous context ingestion, the complex semantic mapping, the autonomous negotiation between agents, it raises an important question for me.
Oh, what's that?
One that pushes slightly beyond the technical blueprint and into, well, the philosophical reality of modern business.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
If an agentic AI layer flawlessly executes thousands of workflows day after day, continuously mapping the deep semantic relationships between a company's finance, HR, supply chain, and sales data, does the AI eventually understand the true operational identity of the business better than the CEO does?
Oh, wow. I mean, if it sees every connection and remembers every single outcome, it just might.
It's entirely possible.
Now, that is a thought to take with you to your next strategy meeting. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the systems around you, keep learning, and we will catch you next time.